Hello and welcome to the Siwi Sofa, where we sit down with some of the most interesting participants at this year's World Water Week to learn more about the array of water-related issues being discussed this week in Stockholm. And for the first time, we're being live streamed as well on the Siwi Media Hub, so you can tune in there at any time to watch any of the Siwi Sofas as they're being broadcast. My name is Eric Paglia, host of the Siwi Sofa, and the name of this session is Global Framework on Water Scarcity in Agriculture, which is a new FAO initiative that was launched at last year's COP22 in Marrakesh, with some 30 partner institutions participating. The Global Framework Steering Committee is meeting here in Stockholm this week, and we're very fortunate to have some of the members with me here on the Siwi Sofa to discuss water scarcity in agriculture and how the framework will help tackle this global problem. Joining me here today, we have Olcay Unver, the Deputy Director of the Land and Water Division at FAO. We have Peter McCormick, Executive Director of the Doherty Water for Food Global Institute at the University of Nebraska, and Marco Arcieri, the Secretary General of the Italian Division of the International Commission on Irrigation and Drainage. Welcome, gentlemen. Very nice to have you here on the Siwi Sofa. Perhaps we can start by discussing why or what are some of the root causes and drivers of water scarcity in agriculture that have motivated this new framework agreement.
Yeah, maybe I can start. Water scarcity is a phenomenon that have an impact on most countries. One obvious major reason is that some countries do not have enough water, so that's the physical water scarcity. But a lot of countries suffer from water scarcity because of the lack of institutional capacities, lack of infrastructures, lack of proper investments, or because of competition. So water scarcity, one way or another, is impacting about 40% of the global population, and this is projected to increase. So this is why FAO decided to do something about that, especially because of its linkages to food production and sustainable agriculture. And this is how water scarcity was elevated from the confines of a UN agency to a partnership that covers with a lot of partners and institutions.
And can you please tell us about how this impressive group of partners came together to address the challenges, and what will they be doing together under the auspices of FAO?
Well, none of us would be able to deal with the impacts of water scarcity in terms of food production, in terms of natural resource management, and especially when it comes to dealing with the impacts of climate change, with less water being available. And member states acknowledge this in their nationally determined contributions to a large extent, indicating that water was a big issue. For example, almost all of the countries in Africa indicated water as an issue. So FAO made a call to the international community, to member states, knowledge institutions, membership institutions, and various networks to come under the umbrella of an initiative like this and join forces. So this is how it came about. And this came very nicely after the Paris Agreement, 2015, where it was acknowledged that agriculture is no longer a part of the problem, but it was a part of the solution to the problem. So partnering with 40 plus institutions, now we have this global framework getting ready to start producing solutions.
Very interesting to hear more about the solutions. And Peter?
Yeah, I think that's one of the beauties of this partnership is that each of the solutions, each context requires solutions that fit the particular conditions, whether it's in Tanzania or Ethiopia or the US. But sharing these solutions and the ideas across a much wider group of partners really allows us to approach what is a very large-scale issue, but it needs local solutions to address the issue at that particular location.
I mean, how do you match that up? These sort of global outlooks and solutions with these very local situations. How do you bridge that gap?
that's the gap we bridge by partnering with the different groups of people, both the partners in the individual countries and the partners who are working in those areas. We have a number of research organizations, but also private sector implementation organizations, different methodologies for delivering solutions and for adapting solutions for those contexts, whether it's the private sector, the public sector, or other partners. And as Olcay mentioned, we have already 40 partners wanting to engage and participating. I think it's still a very big undertaking, but I think the key to this is to the African proverb is, if you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, is to go together. And I think this is a very fine example of that in the water and food space.
And perhaps you can tell us a bit about your respective organizations. You're based at the University of Nebraska.
Right.
Marco, you're in Italy. Two very different climates, set of conditions. How do you implement this framework in your own
let Peter
regions?
describe first his,
Okay.
because my university.
Yeah, we're a 7-year-old institute, but we're established on the foundations of the University of Nebraska and the conditions in Nebraska. But we're really established by our board to focus on a global engagement, and so we're a large university in the land grant system, but we have many partners within the state and within the US. But even with that, we're still a small player in terms of this issue. So global partnering with these different groups around the world, this is what is a requirement of what we do and how we work as an institute.
The National Commission on Irrigation and Drainage actually is based, its center office is in India, in New Delhi, and it is organized, it has a wide network of countries which are part of this international commission, more than 80 countries, and we are based in almost everywhere in the world. And actually my national committee, of course, is located in Italy, so very much difference of climatic conditions, but this network guarantees that we can, how can I say, we can stimulate, we can advise all national governments where we are located, where we are present. This is one of the good facts, I think, that, and this is why one of the good reasons why International Commission adhered with a lot of enthusiastic approach to the initiative launched by FAO.
Olcay, you mentioned that 40% of the world faces water scarcity in agriculture. You also pointed out Africa. Is there a sort of regional prioritization or profile for this initiative, this framework, or is it truly a globally spanning framework?
This is truly a global framework. In certain regions, the need is different or greater. For example, in Near East North Africa, FAO has a regional initiative that looks at actual implementations, because there is a acute physical water scarcity there. But as I indicated, water scarcity hits everywhere. In all regions, it does exist. And as population increases on a global scale, as we produce and consume more, and as the competition from other sectors increase, then water scarcity is bound to worsen. So this is the time to do something about it.
I think we're certainly a global partnership, but then there's other regional initiatives, there's country initiatives, and then there's regional initiatives for which a number of our partners are engaged with. In Africa, for instance, there's the African Union process around development of agriculture, and agricultural water management, water in agriculture, is a key pillar of that process. So our partners would look to work with, we already work with them individually, but look to work and include the African Union and the individual countries in engaging with this framework.
And could you give us any examples of how this is being implemented? Any on-the-ground anecdotes? I know it's a relatively recent framework, just being launched in the end of 2016. But is there anything already up and running at this point?
Well, collectively, the partners of the initiative are involved hundreds of programs and projects around the world. The initiative, the FAO initiative that I indicated for Near East North Africa region, has been in existence for 6 years, and it's now under implementation in 11 countries, where the governments are provided technical assistance, capacity building, and catalytic transformative projects in dealing with water scarcity. And many of our partner agencies are involved in various levels of implementation, ranging from producing knowledge to actually implementing it. As the global framework, which had its second meeting, steering committee meeting only 2 days ago, we have identified a number of areas to focus on, and decided to establish working groups, and are now starting to produce ideas, programs, and projects to deal with that. So maybe next year when we meet here, we can talk about what we have actually implemented. Right now we are in the process of gearing towards implementing those and planning those. These areas, the three important areas that the group collectively decided to take action on are water and migration, drought preparedness, and innovative financing to deal with water scarcity. So hopefully in a year's time we will tell you what the group has done collectively on this.
On the drought, we're already, as Olcay mentioned, we're already working, a number of us are already working on drought in that project or the program in the Middle East, pulling in more of the partners to really focus on this around drought preparedness. We already have ongoing work that we can build on and use the synergies between the various partners. We're not starting from zero, we're certainly looking at where are the priority areas we all feel we can contribute and move these areas forward to address the overall issue of water scarcity in agriculture.
I think one of the added values of this partnership is that we are aware now that water scarcity is really a global problem. Of course, we are dealing more with developing countries, but as you have seen, as everybody has seen, drought is affecting every part of the world. I think California has just come out from a very dramatic period of drought, but even it's difficult to say. I mean, maybe it's difficult to understand, but even the developed countries, the Mediterranean area, this very first year, is facing a very serious problem with water scarcity. So I think the added values of the partnership is that we are really committed to face the problem everywhere, of course with different criteria, but everybody is committed to face this serious issue.
And Olcay, you mentioned knowledge production. Is that a component of this as well, is to produce new knowledge on the roots of water scarcity, and how do you go from that kind of knowledge into the actual formulating policies and projects?
What this partnership is doing is addressing that exactly in the root cause. Sometimes, in a lot of times, when you act individually, you look at it from one aspect and deal with it, while other aspects, and in many cases the root cause remains. So this partnership looks at the various aspects of water scarcity, be it in water management, be it in technology. It could be under certain conditions, it could be developing drought-resistant crops or better livestock management, or the solution could be in sustainable diets in other places. So the good thing about this partnership is that each partner brings not only its particular audience, like research personnel or networks of country commissions, but also their perspective. So collectively you can deal with an issue from different angles and address the root cause more realistically and more holistically.
That's very interesting. And how does this framework intersect with the SDGs? Is there any explicit collaboration or setting of goals through SDGs on this?
Yeah, I think one of the opportunities, and we still are working on this, a number of the partners are working on how much of what we do are really looking at SDG 6, the one on water, but also SDG 2 on food security, and climate change as well plays into this, what we need to be focusing on. But certainly in those areas, a number of us have been working on how to measure progress towards SDG 6, how we can achieve using less water to produce the food and actually make our systems more secure in that respect. So I think that's an area where we are exploring amongst the partners how we can bring our efforts together around measuring progress towards SDG 6, as well as then these other parts of the program that would actually deliver towards SDG 6, because we need to measure that progress to ensure that we're actually achieving what we're trying to do.
And of course, in addition, this partnership is a good example of contribution of the partners to SDG 17, being a partnership for actually dealing with a major issue. One reason of water scarcity in many countries is the loss and waste of food. One third of global food production is either lost or wasted after the production, either in post-harvesting or at the consumer level in our refrigerators or tables. So addressing this is also addressing SDG 12, which is about better consumption patterns. So we believe that we are addressing multiple SDGs, again, in a holistic manner, not in isolation from one another.
And as we discussed, this framework was launched at the COP22 meeting in Marrakesh last year. You considered it an achievement to receive official recognition that water scarcity is a climate issue. Is there any explicit collaboration between the work of the UNFCCC with climate change and the global framework here?
Yes, absolutely. We are this global framework is an initiative of the Climate Summit. So it was created and launched there, and it goes back to each COP. In this case, the COP23 in Bonn, to report to what has happened in the meantime in the preceding year. So it is an initiative under the UNFCCC umbrella, and UNFCCC is, by the way, a partner in this initiative.
It has been relaunched in the second World Water Forum for Irrigation that we have had last year in Thailand, and where a high-level advisory panel was established in order to consider this issue. So it has been, many times, it has been relaunched until now. So it's a very...
Although it's not exclusively, as well as climate change and that those drivers associated with that, these other drivers that also you mentioned in terms of the population growth, demand for higher value products, more protein and so forth, that will increase the demand for water and agriculture out with any climate change. So it's as well, it's not just on the climate change aspect we need to be focusing on. In many countries it's going to be this demand for more production, for livelihoods, for food security and for economic growth that will impact the overall demand and competition for water and cause issues in agriculture as water becomes more scarce.
Again, all three of you are members of the steering committee for the Global Framework, which had a meeting, your second meeting, I believe, yesterday.
Yes.
Here in Stockholm. Perhaps you could tell us a bit about what was discussed, what was decided, and what's happening next.
Let me start maybe at a macro level, then and my colleagues can go into the details. What was decided was that we wanted to have a pragmatic agenda to start making a change and provide assistance to stakeholders and member states. And the steering committee agreed on a number of criteria in order to go through the capabilities and the possible actions, possible routes that can be taken, and decided on that. So that will lead to a concrete work program, of which I have already mentioned 3 elements: migration and water, drought preparedness, and innovative financing schemes. And along with those, the criteria will be applied to bring about the elevate the comparative advantages of each partner in order to come up with the best combinations of interventions that can come from this collective group, as opposed to each member implementing their own programs in isolation from one another. So we talked a lot about the synergies and being able to produce collectively more than what each one of us would have produced otherwise.
Working along those three areas, really focusing on how we can achieve outcomes together, and beyond the products and so forth, but how can we actually have impact on the ground. I think that was the reinforcement of this idea within the partnership, and how we can do that as a group rather than the individual activities we're involved in.
Yes. The idea is exactly what was said before. I mean, everybody can do this, but if you do it in a collective way, of course, the expectations are that the result will be much more effective and much more productive. So this is the idea that is behind this framework to address a very important issue such as water scarcity in a new holistic approach, with a new holistic approach and in a collective manner.
Okay, well, gentlemen, thank you very much for joining me here on the Siwi SOFA. We look forward to having you back next year to give us an update on the progress being made on this very exciting and interesting global framework.
Absolutely. Thank you for having us.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And thank you for tuning in to the Siwi SOFA, broadcasting live on the Siwi Media Hub, and also will be uploaded afterwards. And stay tuned for more episodes throughout the World Water Week.